Welcome to the Dev Life podcast, everybody. My name is Brooke, and as always, I'm here with my very good friend and co-producer, Matt. Hello, Matt.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are joined by, actually, I'm going to let them tell this really cool story, but Matt's friend and also an accomplished marketer and entrepreneur. Uh, his name is Scott Harward. So we're very delighted to have him on the show. But Scott, I was just saying, like, I think you will do a much better job introducing yourself and giving us some of your background and experience. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, so uh, I've been in marketing for the past 20 years, and I've loved it. For those who know different personality types, I'm an INTJ. So I'm very systems focused. I'm very technically focused. I love plans. I love strategies. And that's what attracted me to marketing, was starting out in SEO. That's where Matt and I got our roots in marketing was working on an SEO company called Castawave. Though we've known each other for a lot longer, Matt and I grew up as neighbors, and I was at his house all over the time, eating all of his food, picking on him, and getting in trouble sometimes. But we started out at Castawave, where we were able to write a handbook on SEO and really be able to develop some innovative strategies. And from there, I was able to really get a firm root in digital marketing. I eventually made the switch over to affiliate marketing and paid media. And I fell in love in particular with the paid media because it's just a big system of how to reach people at the right time across the world. And so I developed a specialty of focusing on e-commerce for large scale e-commerce campaigns. And eventually I ended up starting an agency called JX Strategy, along with building an attribution tool called Journey, which better helped measure the marketing performance of the campaigns that I was running. So from there, I've moved into a new startup called JX Strategy, or not JX Strategy, a new company called BoxTalk, which does AI-powered analytics for fulfillment warehouses. So I'm still in the e-commerce space, just taking an approach of helping fulfillment warehouses manage and navigate their data using AI. And so that's me.
Very cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. Now, so you mentioned you guys kind of grew up around each other. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about that. What's some of the history with, and what foods were you eating at his house?
Well, I can speak to that a little bit. It was mostly ice cream, and
Okay, it's important. Very good.
and yeah, we just did all sorts of shenanigans. But there must have been something in that ice cream because us and the other people in our friend group all ended up being very successful in business and SEO and all sorts of stuff. So I guess,
I'd actually argue it was the cheese and the ham and cheese hot pockets that we ate every day.
Ah, okay.
that is true.
Okay.
That
Yes.
was probably the most.
That's funny. Okay, now I'm curious also because you said what was your personality type? An IN
INTJ, so the architect.
architect. Okay, so I am an advocate. I'm an INFJ. So do you know yours, Matt?
Yes, I'm ENTP, the same as Walt Disney.
Oh, okay, okay. Very nice. Yeah, oh yeah, I think mine was like Lady Gaga or something. I don't even remember. It was something random, but anyway, if you have not ever taken the personality test, everybody, go to 16personalities.com and that's where you'll find out what your personality type is. But yeah, well, again, we're really excited to have you on the show. So thank you for coming, Scott.
Weeks, glad to be here.
Awesome. So just getting into a little bit about what you do. Um, could you explain what GEO is versus SEO and kind of what's involved in it?
All right. So diving into the hard questions here. So a little bit of background. SEO stands for search engine optimization, which a lot of people in the tech space are familiar with that now, at least with the concept. A lot of people still are about 5 years behind in their knowledge on average, where the goal is to show up in Google and in Bing and DuckDuckGo, all the different search engines. The goal is to refine your website and your content so that you can show up. And previously, that's kind of diverged into two fields. There's the technical SEO and the on-site SEO, which a lot of devs have to deal with. So that deals with site speed. That's with canonical links. That's with the sitemap. That's doing all the little details to make sure your website is performing well enough for the search engines to be interested in the first place. Then there's the offsite SEO, and that's kind of more of the marketing side of SEO, where it's about making sure you can get links from other websites, which that's not the main goal. The main goal is to get traffic and attention from other websites, which then will garner the attention of the search engines towards you. So my opinion has always been the best SEO is a well-rounded marketing plan. But you do have to make sure you hit certain aspects of it. So then you're friendly towards the systems and that you're friendly towards the crawlers, that you are ranking well for the factors that they look for in the ranking algorithm. So that's been the standard. But obviously with AI, there's been a major shift. Talk to any college student right now and ask them how often they use Google. Google has been our best friend. It's been my best friend as a marketer and as a person, as a professional. I know Google's been a savior for devs and engineers, because where does it lead you to? It leads you to the different help forums of the different devs, like Stack Overflow. Like it helps you get to the resources you need just by Googling it, which empowers you as a user. But we're seeing a major shift. Ask any college student, and they will tell you that they just use ChatGPT now to search. And that's a major shift, because how do you optimize towards AI?
Right.
How do you make sure AI finds you? How do you even make sure that GPT knows that you exist as a company, as a website, as a software, as a code base? How do you make sure that they know? And that's been something that we're all trying to figure out. That's an algorithm that I am working on figuring out right now for several projects that I work on. And, we saw a shift in previously of, design first for mobile, develop first for mobile, then worry about desktop later. Well, now we're seeing that same shift of market first to AI, SEO second. So that's what the new acronym is about, is optimizing for generative AI. So that's been the major shift that we're all trying to figure out. And I know everyone's trying to figure out what's going to happen with our general workflows, but as marketers, it's also impacting us, of just how do we make sure products are found? What does this mean? And like for me, I specialize in paid media, but I can't run ads in GPT. So what do I do? How do I reach people? How do I make sure that I can drive sales for my clients?
So here's the next deep question for you then. Why does a developer care? Why should a software engineer care? Because everything you just said makes total sense. But why would we want to be talking about this on our podcast for software engineers? What do you think is relevant to them, and why should they be informed on all of this?
Yeah. So I've worked a lot with developers in my career as a marketer. I'm a little bit unique in that way. I have worked shoulder to shoulder with the developers, and right now I'm actually the head of product for Boxstock. So I actually talk with the dev team every single day. And through that, I've learned that a lot of engineers, a lot of developers see marketing as fluff. It's kind of fluffy, but that's kind of because that's what you see. Sometimes you see the fluff and you're like, oh man, they're just over promoting that product. Or you kind of see the scammy stuff. Your spider senses go off when you're like, ew, this seems like a scam, and that triggers what you see as marketing. But the reality is, marketing is much more than just shameless promotion. Most marketing you don't even realize happens. Just for example, I see in the background both those microphones. How'd you find them? How did you decide you want that microphone?
Because it's
That
colorful.
I guarantee you took at least 7 steps to decide on that microphone, and half of them were marketing steps. Most of the reviews you read online, that's marketing. They actually make a commission from most product reviews. And like, how'd you find out about your chair is awesome, by the way. It's got the LED lights, like it looks comfy, it looks cool. But how'd you find out about it? How'd you find out about your computer that you're using? Was it word of mouth? Was it only a recommendation from a friend, or did you do some research online? That's all part of marketing. And I bring that up because what you develop and what you build, you want to be used. But can anybody use your product, use your tool, use your software, use your ideas if they don't know about it? Like, they can. That's why a lot of softwares and tools go unused, because it's a really cool idea, but they fail to communicate it properly. They fail to make sure that it can be found. And so it just sits there. And nobody finds it. No one uses it. No one understands it. So there are a lot of cool technologies out there that just simply don't get used because no one knows how to find it.
I totally agree. And like this was one of the number one reasons that you were at the top of my list of things I think developers need to hear. Because I have talked to so many engineers who've asked me, "Hey Matt, how do I get this startup going? I built this product, no one's here. What do I do?" And I tell them about marketing, and they're just like, "No, no, no." Like they just go back to building it, you know? Like I have a friend who's built many different products, and the piece he's missing is marketing. And you know, I just think there's so many engineers who this is the missing piece to them succeeding at their side project, because they're good at building but struggle with being discovered. So, what are some practical steps you think devs can take, just from first getting into it, to make their projects easier to find online?
So number one, I would actually start with the user experience. Just from my experience of with different products, is a lot of people go live before they've thought about what the actual user experience is. Now, this is a trap. You got to be careful here. I do recommend sometimes you just got to go with what you have, and get out of the mindset of, if I just build this, if I just build this, I'll be ready. If I just build this, that's a bad mindset. But you also have to pass some thresholds of usability. I've seen some really cool tools that were built that they actually they accomplish some really cool things, but they're too difficult for a regular user to use, which is a blind spot of a lot of engineers that I've worked with. They think, oh, well, I know how to use it. It's easy. But then can you hand it to a 10-year-old and then be able to figure it out? If not, if they don't know how to navigate that interface, then maybe you should reconsider how usable it is. So that's the first step. And then once you have that, is then developing the story. What is the actual story? How do you communicate what this solves? Once you figure out the story, the opportunities are endless. But unless you have that story, you're going to be holding a megaphone to your message. But if the message makes no sense, then then it will reach people, but won't actually impact people. So first is make sure it meets a usability standard. Second, make sure that you've got a message. So what does the problem solve, and why should people actually care? Is it an actual pain point? Because, I recently, some of the features that I built to Box Talk, I discovered that they were really cool features in the tool. But then we talked to several of our target audience, and they came back and said, "Oh, these are great, but here's my real pain." And it turns out what we had built were vitamins, which are good to take, but we hadn't built a painkiller. And the painkiller is really what's going to sell. And that's really the message that's going to resonate across, is just like, what's the actual message? What's the actual pain? Is it a vitamin? Is it something cool? But and then start working on sharing that story. So you figured out the usability, you figured out your base story, then just start sharing it. You can share it on LinkedIn, you can share it on Facebook, you can share it on Instagram, you can share it on TikTok. Just start sharing. If you don't start sharing the story, you won't discover what you need to share it. Because, for example, you may go to share it to LinkedIn, but you discover, oh, I actually don't have a website. Or I don't have a web page that actually talks about this. So what do I link back to? So the goal is to try to share it. And if you can't share it, then build the resources to share it. And then you'll learn that it's just step by step of being like, okay, I want to share this on LinkedIn. How do I want to share it? Do I just record myself and share it? But then when I record myself, where do I send people? Do they just comment and then we just have a message? If so, that's great. But if you want them to actually sign up for your tool, you have to have a page for them to go to sign up, or you have to have a login system, or you just have to have a way for people to act. And once you start sharing, then you can figure out how to amplify what you are sharing. And that's where paid media comes in. That's where affiliates comes in, which most people don't know affiliate marketing exists. But there's the three pillars of paid media, the paid media, SEO, and then affiliate marketing. Those are basically what support the whole internet. Social is actually just a small one on the side. It's becoming bigger and bigger, but the reality is social is just a small pillar in the marketing scheme. But that's a great place to start, is just start sharing. And then you can start building a community in a variety of ways, whether that's a podcast, whether that's just social posts, whether that's actually putting money behind it and running some ads, or whether that's figuring out a partnership with someone who already has an audience. Then those are the ways that you can start propelling the marketing forward.
It's reminding me of, I'm sure you've read Story Branding. Yeah. So the idea being that you are using story as kind of the vehicle that you're delivering your product to people, but that you're making the user the hero of their own story, and I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is that they're so excited to share their product. They're so excited about what they're doing, and they believe so much in it. Nothing wrong with that. But their messaging gets a little bit twisted in there, because then all of a sudden they're the hero. The product is the hero. And really, you're supposed to be developing something. Your application should be the guide to make the user the hero. So I don't know, that's something I've tried to kind of keep in mind just after reading that book, and it's stuck with me. And I really believe that, though. I think that there's a lot of power in letting people be the hero of their own stories.
Yeah, we're all side characters in other people's stories, but we're the main in our story. that's one thing that in marketing you always have to keep in mind is if something is not interesting to you, you're not the target audience. And that's also why a lot of people think that marketing is scammy or fluffy, because they receive ads for things that they're not interested in,
Right.
but they're just simply not the target audience. Um, though there are fluffy and scammy marketing out there, but you always have to take the user in mind. It's marketing, and this is what's defined my career, is marketing and user interface design are actually go hand in hand. Both are very user centric and thinking, how do I make it as easy for the user as I can? And as friendly and motivating to the user. UX design and marketing are the same thing, just packaged into two different industries.
Absolutely. Yeah. So shifting gears just a little bit. So for maybe we have some engineers listening to this who don't care about making their own product. They just want to work for their business or in a dev role. Even then, often they're working as team members with other marketers. And so, what's the biggest mistake you see when devs and marketers try to work together, or what advice or thoughts do you have for devs working on teams with marketers?
Yeah, so in the workplace, there tends to be three polarizing teams. There's that don't mix very well. Did you know that marketing and sales teams actually tend to butt heads? They tend to not get along very well. And guess who also doesn't get along very well with marketing and sales? The dev team. So it's a little bit of three groups that tend to butt heads with each other because there can be conflicting priorities. But I've learned the key is to have proper communication and have some processes to work together. A while back, I worked at Icon Health and Fitness, which owned 60% of the market for fitness equipment. So treadmills, exercise bikes, weightlifting equipment. They own 15 different brands. And it's likely you've ran or biked on or touched one of their products. And they had a dev team of about 20 engineers. I was on the marketing team, and I actually needed to go ask some questions to the developers about some of the marketing pixels. And I walked over to the person that I was told to go talk to. And as I walked into the area that the devs were working, I actually got scowls.
No.
Like I was not welcome in their area. And then I walked up to the person I needed to talk to, and he ignored me. I sat there for over 30 seconds just in silence. I was like, like I made it clear I was there and I needed to talk to him, and he just ignored me. And then after that 30 seconds, I didn't walk away, and he was like, "What do you want?" And he did say it in like a gruff, mean way, and he gave me a side eye, like, "What the heck are you doing?" And I was taken aback. I was like, "Whoa, whoa, friendly fire. I'm here to just ask you a couple questions." and he was not very pleasant in that conversation, but I wasn't scared away. I'm kind of more of a persistent individual, and I just had learned that the developers had some keys to some things that I needed for my marketing projects. And so I went over, and over time, this one developer, he learned that I was his friend and that I actually made his life easier because I came over to brainstorm with him and do some technical refinement. I would run ideas behind him first, or I'd run ideas to him. I'd be like, "All right, so here's my idea. What would it take to do this? Is this feasible? Is this not feasible? Like, would this take a month? Like, what would this take? And he learned that I ran ideas with him first. And then if he approved, like if we synced up and we both approved it, I would then take it to the executives. And then the executives would approve it. And we already had a game plan. And I already knew it was possible. He already knew it was possible. And so we were both happy about it. There were some ideas I ran by him. I'm like, is this plausible? And he's just like, no, don't do it. And I was like, okay, I won't do it. Like before it even reached an executive's ear, because he was used to executives mandating stuff to him. Like, we need this and we need it in 2 weeks, or we need it by Thursday. Or, thus developers don't like that. I know that. Engineers, like, it's disrespectful, but also it comes from a lack of communication and context. Because executives and other teams really don't know what it takes. But if the dev team and the engineers don't communicate with anybody, no one's going to know what it does take. So if you shut off that communication and that collaboration, it's a vicious cycle. And then the teams just end up not liking each other. And one of the big breakthroughs I actually had was these developers, they had a saying that every time you put a marketing pixel on the website, a kitten dies.
Oh,
That was their saying. But that's because the marketers would come over, and marketer are just some perspective. Marketing pixels and tags are essential for marketing. They are absolutely needed. If you don't have them, you are blind as a marketer and you're spending into the oblivion. They are essential. So marketers need them. And the developers were being used to receiving an email saying, hey, we need this installed on the website. The developers would install it. Everybody would forget about it. And then 2 years later, the marketing pixel causes the website to blow up. And they don't know what's going wrong, what's causing the problem. And it turns out it was because there's this really old marketing pixel that never got removed or updated. And so I worked with the developer in charge of that area, and we set up Google Tag Manager, and he taught me how to manage the tags. That was something that had never previously been attempted. It was just the developer responsibility. But he taught me code. He taught me how to check the tags. He taught me how to use dev tools. And that's been actually one of the keys to my career in helping and providing a very good customer experience for clients. Is I have the technical ability to check marketing tags, which a lot of marketers lack. But he learned stuff about marketing. I learned stuff about dev. And we actually had a very collaborative relationship instead of a competitive trying to just butt heads on competing priorities. So that was a long-winded answer for that one.
that's okay. I think a lot of questions kind of came from that though. And what I'm wondering is how you suggest going about opening those communication channels, because I think of the teams I've worked on, and very often they're laser focused on the projects they have going on, rightfully so, right? But it that makes it difficult for an engineer to vocalize, hey, I think we should be focusing on some marketing here, or voicing some concern or passion for this kind of thing, and likewise to have a marketer come in and suggest adding something else to your to-do list, right? So have you
Yeah.
found any ways for the marketers and the engineering team to really collaborate effectively without ruffling feathers or, causing anxiety somewhere else?
Yeah. So the biggest key I found was talking about impact and priorities. And by that, I mean, what is this project going to do? Because a lot of times I'd go to the dev team and be like, hey, so if we had this, it would have this impact. And I'd get their buy-in on the vision. And so then they understood, oh, so here's where it falls in the priority level rather than just a Jira task board. Like it became real of like, oh, this is going to have an actual impact. And so what I found was when working with engineers is those that actually take ownership over what they are building greatly impacts the quality and the questions. If you're just like, oh, I received this task, this is what it says to do. I mean, it's important to do that, but to ask yourself why, what impact is this going to have? And based on that understanding of the impact, are there additional questions I should be asking? Because a lot of times that's what leads to a failed product is the executives only know how to communicate it within this scope. The dev team only knows how to take it within this scope. So then there's only this much crossover. And the executives are making assumptions. The dev team are making assumptions. And then the dev team produces something that, or engineer team produces something that the executives weren't expecting. That obviously causes problems. But the engineers that I've loved working with the most take ownership, and they'll think through. It'll be like, well, you said this, but if I build it this way, it won't work. Or they'll ask questions of like, so when you say this, are you trying to do this? Or what do you think about this button? What is it actually supposed to do? You know, that's questions I actually get from the developers all the time. They're like, you put this button in the design. What does it actually do? Walk me through. What is the end result? And then you actually get the end result that everyone's expecting. But it takes taking ownership and caring and then asking questions if for some reason it doesn't line up. And by understanding the impact and the priorities and the why of things really helps bridge that gap in communication, which depending on your level of where you're on the dev team, I mean, there's different things, but you could ask within your own dev team of like, hey, do you know why we're doing this? Like I've had developers build buttons and then it literally does nothing. And I'm like, it's supposed to do something, guys. And they're like, okay, you didn't tell us that. And I'm like, it's a button. It's always supposed to do something. Like, you know, like it was a given obvious, like, but I didn't specify enough that they needed, but they also just built the button and then just published it. They didn't take the time to be like, oh, well, there's this button. It's clearly supposed to do something. Let's take the time to figure out the details of what it's supposed to do.
I love that. I love that. You know, I have some perspective on the other side of that conversation you're talking about. At Limble, I recently led the engineering department that works on with the marketing team. And when I did come in, I did feel similar to you and found that by the end, I was very tight with and loved the marketers I worked with because we ended up having conversations instead of one of us telling someone and then they're not being trust. So along those same lines, I think the huge takeaway I get, and I would also add and agree with you on, is building trust between teams and taking the time to talk with each other is so valuable. That way, there's trust when the marketer says, "Hey, this is important. This is a high priority." And then there's also trust for the marketer when the engineer says, this is going to take a week, is there a different way we could approach this? And it sounds like you had that relationship that allowed that to happen so well at that previous company.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess changing topics just a little bit here. I'm so interested in what you were saying about AI. And I'm curious, with AI generating more content than ever, how exactly do we change, like what replaces on-site SEO? Is there something we can do about this to catch this wave?
Yeah, so there are a couple things as well, especially as a dev or as a non-marketer, just as AI is helping non-engineers be able to build code, the opposite is happening of it's now empowering engineers to build non-code.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
you can build websites, you can actually do some cool things. But in terms of some very practical things, uh, pay attention to the algorithm. So that's honestly how I figure out most of my marketing secrets. Is I just simply look and think about how does the system work? So be curious. That's one of the keys that I have figured out through AI and some of the experiments I'm trying right now is run a deep research project. And then actually click the sources button. All right. So now you know the sources. So now you can think about, okay, well, it probably took Reddit. It probably did some Google searches. It probably looked at Wikipedia. Like you can start to identify patterns and figure out the system of, okay, what is AI using as a resource to find information? Treat it like you're trying to figure out what a competitor or another engineer, how they wrote their code. What was the process? What's the algorithm? Marketing is just a bunch of algorithms. It really is. It's either an algorithm of influence or it's an algorithm of technical algorithm. SEO, purely an algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah.
AI, that's an algorithm. The sources are how it finds the sources is an algorithm.
Yeah. Reddit is definitely has value now. I would agree. I see that frequently as a source from AI.
Yeah, it's changing the game. So now I've had to become a lot more involved on Reddit. And I'm experimenting, even though Reddit can be a toxic place.
Yeah, true that.
You got to be ready for that battlefield if you're going there sometimes. But there's also some really safe communities within Reddit. But it goes back to telling your story. So identify what AI is using to figure out what it's saying, what it's using as sources, what is it trusting, and then try to become a trusted source. Show up on those, tell your story. And then you'll find that it actually you'll start showing up. That's been actually one of the keys to an experiment I'm running right now is submitting a $6 press release through this cheap service that does press releases. But it turns out that AI is actually heavily favoring press releases as a source of information. So it's an easy way to kind of get your name out there is have AI literally write the press release and then submit the press release. Sometimes they can be expensive. Press releases tend to start at about $250. But then you can start to test and run experiments and see if you can chip away at the algorithm. And the algorithm's always changing, so it is a game. You just got to try to keep up with the algorithm.
Gotcha. Look at the
So
latest.
many questions. You've mentioned a couple times. I'm going to step away from AI for a second because one that really is, I think we've brought it up a few times, is that, you mentioned the developers really getting intimately aware of the application more than just, I was told to build a button, so I'm going to build a button, but really understanding where does it go? Why does it go there? What is the purpose of this button? But what do you think is the best way for a company to enable the developers to do that? Because, like, quite frankly, that's hard to find that time when you're already putting in so much time just to actually build the thing out. How do you, as a company, effectively help your team to learn your application well enough and understand it from that customer's perspective of what they need and not just what you, the developer, wants it to be or something. Does that make sense?
It is a tough problem. It is because it requires a lot of collaboration. It requires a lot of planning and it requires time, which is hard to stop and take that time. And that's one of my problems right now is I wear two hats at Box Talk. I'm the chief marketing officer. I'm also the head of product. So as part of head of product, I am in charge of design. I'm in charge of the scoping out the features and the documentation, the feature documentation for the product roadmap. Now, the reason why that's hard is because some days I have to put on my marketing hat and I'm not able to be in the documentation. I'm not in Confluence. But then other days I'm like, oh shoot, I spent 3 days in marketing mode. Now the developers have caught up and now I have to hurry and write up a whole bunch of documentation in Confluence. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up. But that's where I would say the biggest key to that is in the management side. It definitely has to come from the managers and a perspective of the managers to be able to work with depends on the size of the company, but work with whoever is giving the direction for the company and making sure that expectations are clear and avoid the trap of hurry, 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 which is hard. I know that's hard, especially pushing back to executives. That can be hard. I always appreciate the developers that did always tell the executives, now take whatever time it's going to be in your head and times it by at least 3.
Right.
Take whatever estimate I give you and times it by 3, because there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be problems. And we got to stop and plan. And I promise you, if we plan, you'll get the product you need. But if we don't plan, you may get with something that you're not expecting.
I think that is such a critical thing for especially managers and leaders to really understand, is that, and going back to AI now, is that there seems to be this assumption that AI is going to make everything so much faster and we'll be able to deliver things so much quicker than we could have. But then also likewise, you've got that competitive market of other companies putting out their product. So, okay, well, let's let AI just help us. We'll put this out super fast. But I think there's a real danger in over relying on what AI can do. Do you know what I mean? I just think
Yeah.
it's a good thing to stop and kind of consider and just go, okay, what, like let's just pause for a moment. I think people need to keep pausing and really thinking about something rather than just assuming AI is going to solve it all.
Yeah. One thing I had to do that this came to mind, I've had to protect the developers. I'm not on the dev team, but I work very close with them. And I've learned I've had to work with the executive team to stop and evaluate what they're actually communicating. So I actually built a document in Confluence called our roadmap and milestones planning. And I have different buckets and it's stages of progress. I've got prioritized and in progress. Then I have in queue, which then I have subtitles. And I'm like, in queue means that we've done the feature refinement. We've done the UX is ready, like the designs are ready to go. And the technical refinement has occurred. All 3 have to occur for it to get moved into that spot. And then I have a in scoping, where that's where it's like, okay, so we're aware of these projects that we want scoped out. It's either in design, it's either in technical scoping or feature refinement. And then I have another spot that says discovery and draft, where I put the ideas that come up, and then I've got parking lot. But discovery and draft is where I put the ones that feel important, but we've made no actual progress on doing anything on it. And then discovery and draft is like, okay, we're purposely doing the technical refinement, the feature refinement, and the UX. But that's really helped me communicate to the executive team. I'm like, okay, the idea you communicated, we're clear down here. In order to get it into development, in order to plan it into next week's sprint, it has to be up here. But in order for it to be up here, we have to do this, 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 and this. And it's helped me communicate that this is not ready, which helps pull on the reins a little bit when they're in that like, now mode. But that takes a lot of deliberate communication and also kind of sticking to your guns a little bit in a collaborative manner. But that took me putting it in a framework that they understood. Because and no executive is going to understand Jira. It's just not. I mean, shoot, I'm technical. I'm a technical marketer. I am task oriented. I love task management, but Jira just does not connect with me.
It's not
Like,
user-friendly or intuitive. I should say it's not intuitive.
yeah, in the way that it's helpful for development. I guess it's helpful when I develop it into my own workflow, but in the way that the dev team needs it and the sprints and everything, it just doesn't jive with me. And it does not jive with executives. They're not, and that's so like creating those communication layers helps a ton to be able to facilitate that and provide a referee. You know, it's easy to say technical refinement has not happened. We're not ready to press launch. That's very different than saying the team's not ready. They'll be like, why isn't the team ready? I tell you guys, like, yeah, it's like, no, we're not ready because this, and this need to occur. That's a very different story and that's a collaborative story too. That's for feature refinement. Well, we need you to sit down with us for an hour to really flesh out your thoughts and your expectations for this.
Yeah.
Then it puts it back on them like, oh, I got to fit you into my schedule. And then if they're not fitting in your schedule, then you can still clearly say, hey, we expressed we needed this. We haven't gotten it. We're not ready.
Yeah.
It provides an in-between and an accepted framework, I should say.
Yeah, I like how you changed how you mentioned ways to use Jira in a way that becomes more usable outside of engineering. I know like the opposite has been true for me in engineering, that it's like mandatory. And I've worked with marketing teams that like refuse to use it. And then it changed every single dev task into, what does this do right now as soon as possible, and receive it from 10 different marketers. And I have to keep track of 10 different Slack messages. And so, bringing Jira to that group, but then bringing it in a way, as Scott suggested, that vibes with them, I think is a good path out of that scenario. But there's so much to cover, and so much we could go into, but we're running out of time here. So Scott, this has been so valuable, but I do have one last question for you. Since this is the Dev Life podcast with a focus on living our best lives, whether we're a marketer, a dev, or a combination of all, what do you do to live your best life while doing all of this crazy product and marketing work?
All right, I'll geek out a little bit because this is the audience to geek out to this. I talk to this with my fellow executives and marketers, and they don't get it a lot of times. But I, using Notion, a Notion notebook, I actually put together my own task management software. Which I use different equations and calculated metrics in order to prioritize my tasks. So every week I do a weekly planning where at my level, I'm an executive. I'm involved in multiple organizations. I have a lot going on in my brain. So every week I try to sit down and I take an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I have a table in Notion where it lists all of my projects and I rank their priority. Then I go one by one and I do a brain dump. And I use Whisper Flow to record my thoughts. Then I run that into AI to then pull the tasks out of it. And then I transfer that into a task management database in Notion that I have a custom algorithm, and I can define priority. I can define a due date. I actually have a little equation that the closer we get to the due date, the higher priority it makes it. So I've got a prioritization score that automatically adjusts based on how far away the due date is from the current date. And that really helps me keep my mind clear. And then I actually have story points assigned to my tasks. That's one thing I learned from the engineering teams is story points. I actually assign story points to my tasks. And then I've got a nice little chart that tells me how many story points I've accomplished this week, and it makes me happy. So, and it helps keep my brain clear. And the weeks I don't do that, a lot of the tasks pile up in my brain and really decrease. I call it my RAM. I've got too many things in my brain. My RAM is being exceeded. And that's when my anxiety levels spike is when you're keeping track of things in your brain, it's like pressing copy and paste every single time you remember it. So a small task will feel like it's this big, even though it's really just this big. But if you write it down on paper, you get it into a system that helps keep track of it for you. It becomes a lot smaller and a lot more manageable, and then I can live with intent rather than being reactive.
I love that. There was a lot that you just said there that I very much agree with. So excellent. Well, thank you so much. We've really learned a lot out of this, and we had so many questions, but I feel like you just sort of answered all of them. You did such a great job explaining why developers should even care about this and how they can go about learning more about marketing and really how to make that impact on their team or, on a startup project. So thank you for being here. And of course, as always, listeners, we would love to hear your thoughts. If you've had experience with this or not, what are some of the things that you've learned or maybe even are curious about? Do you have questions or comments about marketing and how that relates to development work? But please let us know, to put your comments and everything in the comments box below the video here on YouTube. And there will be a link to Scott's LinkedIn in our comments as well, so you can connect with him there. But it is Scott Harward. And yeah, thanks again. And we really appreciated your time.